So Father's Day is just about a month away, about 34 days as of this filming, and I know that typically it's hard to craft for guys because there's not a lot of options, but we've sort of taken care of that for you. And in this video, we're going to put together a really cool card that has room for a custom photo, and it actually has a very steampunk feel to it as well, so it would work for more than just Father's Day. But let's take a look at what we have here. And I've already kind of pre-inked some of the stuff here just to kind of speed the video along. What we're going to do is we're going to begin by putting together the front of our card. Now this is our card base, and you want to go ahead and get everything folded. Okay, I've got my texture side out, so the smooth side is in. You'll notice that there's a series of little cuts on the card here, and that is to help us with the alignment of our pieces here. And what I think I'm going to do, despite the fact that we have those pieces, is I'm going to begin by actually putting together the face first and putting that on. So what you want to do is find these four pieces. There's the cutout and then the shadow layer. You've got another cutout and another shadow layer. And we're going to get these glued together. And then we're going to adhere that to the front of our card. And that's where we're going to start. So let's get our glue bottles all cleaned up and ready for action here. There are some little detailed small areas on here, so be very sparse with the glue so that we don't create a huge mess. And what we want to do is just line that up nice and perfect on our little shadow layer and just push that down. Get that in place. Okay. All right, and we can repeat the same process for the other side here. And it's a pretty quick card. And the little heart inside of this thing, you can either use to write a message or cut out a photo. And we've included a little template to help you, or actually the machine will actually cut the template for you, or you can do it by hand, whatever you find easier. I think because of the way that we set up that little template, you can totally hand cut it and it'll still look perfect because we've given it a little bit of bleed area. Okay, so we've got those pieces in place. Next you want to find these little pieces, this little accent piece for the hat, and that's going to go there. And this one's going to go here. So let's get those glued in place. Okay. And this is my first bundle since returning from my trip to Orlando. And I initially went there for Disney World, but ended up having a much better time at Universal, mostly because of the Harry Potter exhibits, and they were unreal, is the least I can say. All right, so let's get that nice and lined up. There are some little cutouts on this shimmery black piece that I have here to help you with the correct alignment on that. So make sure you get that nice and aligned. Okay. There we go. Let's put these side by side, and that matches up pretty nicely. Okay, so you're also going to want to find these two little pieces here. Okay, and these are going to get glued on right here, right up to the edge, right in the center, so that there's a little bit of a border at the top and bottom. I guess I wouldn't call it a border, I would call it headroom or headspace. Okay, so we'll just pop that right in the center there. And just try to make sure that you've got it right up to the edge, like so. So anyway, Orlando The temperatures this time of year were actually perfect because I'm not a big fan of the heat, but I did survive. And the humidity was actually way lower than I anticipated. The humidity was higher in Illinois when we came back than it was in Florida. So if I do return there, probably would go around the same time or earlier or later in the year, I think. Okay, so that is that. And at this point, what we can go ahead and do is get these two pieces glued down. Now again, there's a couple little notches here, one on this side and one on this side that's shaped like a letter V, okay? And that is gonna match up with this little angle here. Okay, so you just wanna kind of nudge that up until that V is nice and flush with the actual cutout itself. All right, so this paper that we're using here on the back is kind of, it's not very porous. It's very, I guess, slippery or plasticky or smooth, I should say. So we may need to give this a little extra time to set. But if you're using cardstock, you should be fine. And again, just make sure that you're lining this up with the very edge. So I'm kind of running my fingers along the edge while I hold this, and then just working my way up to that little V shape to make sure that that's in the right spot. So that worked out nicely. Okay, let's just give that a second. There we go. And we'll do the same with this side here. But if you guys are fans of Harry Potter, I really recommend going there. It's they have this ride that it's unreal. You don't even need to wear 3D goggles for some reason, but you're just completely immersed in the world of Harry Potter, and you play Quidditch, and it's just unreal. It was really cool. We actually ended up going on that ride 4 times. I think we loved it that much. So there we go. Get that nice and lined up. Okay, just make sure that it matches up nicely, which it does. And push that down. And there we go. So that's pretty good. Okay, so that's in place. The next thing we want to do is grab these 2 pieces here. And again, there are some markers up here at the top as well as down here. And, well, actually it's just here and here to help you with the placement of these pieces so that you know that you have them aligned and set correctly. Okay, so we're going to glue these down and just kind of keep on going down the line here, assembling this card. Okay, so I'm just going to start down here to make sure that I get that lined up properly, and keep an eye on the little borders. Make sure that the borders are nice and even all the way around, and just do your best. I don't think anyone's really going to notice if things are a tiny smidge off. And I did take and ink this piece with, this is actually different than the inks that I use. It's by Hampton Art. It's the only gray that I had, and it's just to kind of make it look not so polished. It kind of just gave it a little bit of a distressed look on the perimeter there. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. We're going to repeat that process on the other side. Just make sure that you're getting that glue out to the edges, especially along those small little tips where we're aligning everything with those little guides, so that those don't come loose. And this is graphic 45 paper, I believe. Pretty sure. Got a little extra glue on there. And again, I'm going to start down here on the bottom. I'm going to get this little area lined up first. And just making sure that it's nice and straight before I put it down. And height is. There we go. That looks good. Okay, and then for now, all that's left is his little mustache. So we'll get that in place now. That's these two pieces. I inked these with a Jumbo Java by Versa Magic. And we're gonna glue these on flush so that this little straight edge is flush with the center of our gatefold card here. And then we'll do the same thing on the other side. Our front will almost be complete. We'll put together the last little element, but we're not gonna put it on just yet because we're gonna be working on the inside and I don't want it to get ruined or anything. Okay, so do your best to get that nice and centered and pushed up against the edge of that card. Okay, just like that. Here we go. And the other side. Wonderful. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the little feather portion here, it's this little element here, and there's a top little layer that's going to go on that half circle. So we're just going to glue that right to this piece, and you can see that this is actually the back of the feather portion here. So just line that up nice and flush with the bottom half circle portion of the little feather there. Maybe flip it over to make sure that you've got it aligned nicely. And then what we're going to do later is we're going to take and just kind of grab a small pop dot or foam square and adhere that right to the edge of the hat there. Okay, so we can put that off to the side for now. And that's looking pretty sharp. Looks very cool, definitely very manly. Perfect for a guy, I think. And let's take a look at the inside now. We're going to begin by putting this piece down. Okay, now this piece is going to be nice and centered so that we have a border. Okay, so you know what? Let me get my brayer here. Might be a good time to use this thing. Okay, so let us get our glue on this piece. And this is a pretty big piece, but I'm going to be pretty sparse with the glue because I don't want it to warp. And that will sometimes happen with larger pieces like this. So luckily this bottle that I'm using is kind of aged like a wine, and I'm sure that there's some natural blockage in there that's given me a very, very thin line of glue, which I like. I don't like to clean my bottle too often because I kind of like that kind of flow, unless I need more. Okay, just get that right on there. Try to get it as centered as possible. I'm going to use my brayer to help me get that glue to stick nicely. Okay. All right, that looks good. Okay, so our centerpiece is in, and the next thing we're going to do is put our little side pieces on and get those decorated, and then we'll work on the center part with our little heart. So get your glue on this piece, and this is going to be nice and centered, and actually there's a little marker here to help you with the placement. So definitely use that, and there's also one on the bottom. So that's super handy. I use my little brayer there to help me get that on there a little bit quicker. Okay, and the other side. There we go. That's nice. Definitely use those little guides. They certainly help you make sure that everything is nice and beautifully aligned. There we go. Okay, All right, so that is in place. Everything is looking really sharp thus far. And what we're gonna do next is just get a couple pieces in place here. Actually, this may be a good time to transition over to the little segment on how to use the little template. So why don't we take a look at that, and then we'll meet back here so that we can glue our little photo in place. Okay, so I want to show you, I'm going to show you how to use the photo template to cut this out, to cut out our little picture here. I have this picture that I'm going to include in the card. You can use a scrap piece of paper. Just get the photo template file loaded into your cutting system, and just make sure that wherever you leave it on your mat that you don't move it. Okay, I'm using a Cricut. The Cricut is going to automatically position it for me, which is fine. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut this out, and we can watch it do that. And I need to set that to cardstock, and I'm ready to cut. Okay, so the template's cut. We're going to take this off, and we're going to pull this off. Okay, you can get rid of that, save it for another project. And then what you want to do is remove the heart from the center. Okay, so we'll get rid of that. Now, this template here is a little bit larger than what you actually need. So we've allowed for some bleed so that it's not like right, you know, it's not just going to fit this perfectly. We'll have a little bit of room around that as well. So the idea is, and this photo may be a little bit too small, but what you're going to do is you don't want to move this at all. You want to keep this in the same spot. Okay, and what we're going to do, just going to peel it up a little bit. Okay, and what you're going to do is you're going to slide your photo underneath here into the template. Okay, you're going to do your best to get that as centered as possible. And again, mine is a little bit too small, but it's fine because again, this has a bit of a bleed on it. So this photo is going to be a little bit bigger than it needs to be. Okay, so get your photo within that area and then feed it back into your machine. And actually at this point, you can actually remove this. Once you get it figured, once you figure out where you want to put it, you can remove it. And then feed it back in. And you just want to recut that template again. Okay. So we're just going to recut it. Okay, so it cut our little heart shape out, and again, it's going to look kind of weird, but remember, there's a bleed. So even if your photo is a little bit smaller, that's okay. You know, I probably should have cut it a little bit thicker with a thicker setting, but we'll pull that off. Worst case scenario too, what you can always do, if you don't feel comfortable doing this, you can cut this out and then manually cut your photo out, okay? So this looks kind of odd, but you'll notice that when we stick it behind here, okay, it fits perfectly. And that's the result that we're looking for, okay? So again, using this template, if you want, you can simply take this heart and put it over the photo and manually cut it because it is a little bit larger. You can see here that it's larger than this piece here. I'll show you the back. It is much larger.
So even if you hand cut it, you're not gonna see the imperfections, which is totally fine. And the way that I did this, you can see it's not a perfect heart because my photo was too small, but it was still placed in the right spot so that when I put this back here, it fits it perfectly, okay? And again, you can hand cut this or you can have your machine do it. It's totally up to you, but that just looks really cool. Okay, so here's my photo, and this came out not like a perfect heart because my photo is smaller than the template, but the template is larger than it needs to be. It's called a bleed, and that just ensures that everything isn't just lining up perfectly. We're giving you a little room for error as well, so mine has to be pretty spot on. I'm gonna take and glue my photo. I'm just going to put my glue on the back of the photo here, and on that center piece, what I would do is find the little V shape that is, it's going to match up with the V shape on the heart, and just get that glued into place following that V shape. So I'm going to stick my head in here for a second, just to make sure that I don't mess this up, but then I'll show you here. And then there's also the bottom of the heart at the bottom there. So make sure that yours fits within that guide, okay? And then one way to kind of test this is to place this in place here, like so. This is gonna go right in the center, and that is actually perfect. So that photo is gonna work perfectly for me, okay? All right, so all that's left to do is, well, all that's really left to do at this point is decorate the two sides with our little buttons. So we have 3 for this side, 3 for this side. I inked this again with a jumbo Java. I hit this paper with some rhubarb stock. That's also a dewdrop ink. So we'll go ahead and get this glued down to our little brown button. And just make sure that you're not obstructing the little buttonholes. Okay, and you'll notice that on these little panels here, there's also some indicators as to where these go. So what you want to do is just line that up with the little indicators so we can stagger these evenly and make everything nice and symmetrical. So let me grab this one here, throw a little glue on it, and I'll pop it in place. And again, just there's 3 sets of little identifiers, and I'm gonna bring this over to my head so that I can see this better. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think the little indicators may be tough to see once you're placing this on there, but as long as you use it as a rough guide, it's better than nothing, so that we can try to get this to look as symmetrical as possible. Okay, let me put my glue on this button. So you can go ahead and continue on down the row here. Okay, so I actually took my phone and turned the flashlight on and pointed it right in this little area where that notch is. And I think that's gonna help me see where to place this a little bit better. Yeah, that definitely helped. Okay. All right, so you get the idea there on how that works. You're going to repeat that same process on this side here, and then we can begin working on the actual little mechanism that goes inside there. So let's finish up the buttons, and then I'll meet you back here in just a moment. Okay, so I've got my buttons in place. We got the front nice and done. Our photos in place. Do is grab these 2 pieces, and we're going to adhere them to this main pattern panel here. So just get our glue on this piece here. And I think I read another comment about how it seems that I never get covered in glue, but I don't think that's true, guys. You guys see glue on my hand all the time, which is why I'm wiping it under my desk. And yes, I'm still doing that, but I may or may not have a little something under there to keep it clean. All right, so now we'll go ahead and put this one on here. So these two pieces are just kind of little accent pieces that are going to go on this to give us a little more contrast. And actually, this would work for stamping or journaling or writing a little note, whatever you want to do actually. So just get that right in place. Just make sure you got a nice little border going around there. Okay, there we go. And that just leaves our little mechanism, and then we glue this piece down, and we're pretty much done with that. And then we've got an envelope and a little bow tie to put together, and we can call it a day. Okay, so the next step is to take these two pieces. You want to go ahead and fold this over, and this is how it's going to work. They're going to come in here. These tabs are going to get glued right on this overlay, and there's two little markers to help you with the vertical alignment. Okay, but just make sure that you get these in the right spot. This one's going to go on this side, so you have a heart shape there. This one's going on this side, this one's going on that side. And what you can do is kind of flip it like this, and we'll get our glue right on this little tab here, and get a good amount of glue on there. And then look for the little lines here, and the edge of this is going to go right up to the edge of this panel here. Okay, so I might have to get my head in here because it's kind of, it's a little hard to see. There they are. Okay, I see them now. And I will show you in a second here where this is going to go and how it works. Let me just get my head in here real quick. Okay, just like that. So the top of this and the bottom of this is going to be between the two little lines, little score marks that are cut into this panel piece. Okay, so it's going to look like that. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing on this side here. Just find your little score marks. I see them there. And get our glue on this tab here, and then get that glued into place. Again, we want the tabs to be flush with this panel. So let me get my head in here and I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. Okay, just like that. There we go. All right, so now these are going to go in like this, and they should be pretty much perfectly aligned. And there's a little wiggle room for error, so don't feel bad if it's not perfect. And then finally, what we're going to do is we're going to cover this up like so. So you can see how that looks. That looks really cool. And we're going to put glue just up at the top and the bottom. We don't need to put glue on the entire thing because then the moving parts won't work properly, but definitely get some glue up at the top and then get some glue down at the bottom. Make sure that you're getting that glue right out to the edge. And I am probably going to spread that glue right out to the very, very edge, like so. And just get that nice and centered on your card. And make sure that the heart matches up with the actual cutout. And make sure that that is centered. Let me pull that off while I can. That looks good. And that looks good. Get that glued down. And there we go. So when it opens up, it reveals your little photo in there. Okay. And there we go. Okay, so that is how that goes together. Super cute. All right, now let's take a look at our little band here. All right, so there's a score mark here and there's a little score mark here. This is a little tab that we're going to use to glue this thing closed. So we're just going to glue it like that and just make sure that it lays flat. Give it a good push. Okay. All right, I'm going to grab my dowel and I'm going to give this a little bit of a train, more so in the middle there. I just don't want it to crease. It will probably end up somewhat creasing, but I want to try to avoid the crease being too intense, so to speak. And there's two little square parts here. What we're going to do is we're going to glue those right to the center. So let's grab a little bit of glue and just pop that right in the center there. Just make sure that that little round area there aligns nicely. So if they were flat, it would be a kind of a silhouette. It sits on there like perfectly. So if you run your finger, it's smooth and they're all on top of each other nicely. Okay, then grab your glue, put another dot in the center there, and get that piece aligned. And just make sure that that bottom piece there is lined up nicely. Okay, there we go. And you can kind of flatten that out a little bit if you want. Okay, so that is going to be the front of our bow, and you can see this little cutaway here that reveals the paper on the inside, which gives it kind of a cool two-tone effect. And then we have this piece here. I'm just going to take this and just wrap it around my dowel. You don't have to do this because ultimately it's just going to get wrapped around like that. But doing that kind of makes it a little more round looking, so it's not so flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw a little bit of glue on the back of this and pop that in there and just glue that down. Okay, and because I'm squeezing it, it's probably going to flatten this thing out a little bit. So what I'm going to do when I glue this other piece down is I'm going to glue it so that this thing kind of sticks out a little bit. So I'm not going to make it super tight. I'm just going to give it a little bit of slack so that there's a little more dimension to the bow. Okay, so that's probably good there. And just hold that in place for a second while it dries. Okay, so our cute little man is going to have a nice little bow tie to go with his cool hat. All right, so then we've got the band here. We're going to take and we're going to glue the bow right to the center of our little band here. Let's just do our best to get that nice and centered. I could probably use my little thing here as a guide so you can see that this thing's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inches. So we want to kind of nudge this thing over so it's 2.5 inches right dead center. And that's pretty good. Okay. And there we go. So this should slide over our card perfectly. And you may want to give that a little more time to dry before you slide it over. And without fail, my neighbor is mowing his lawn while I'm doing my videos. Without fail. And there we go. Okay, so there's the card. That's pretty much ready to go, minus that little feather that we talked about. I'm gonna grab a little foam square And let's see if that's too big. Yeah, it's just about the right size. And I'll peel that off. I'm gonna get yelled at for this. There we go. I'm gonna just pop that right on the edge of the hat there. He's got a little feather in his cap. He must be having a good day. There we go. Also, one other thing you can do to add a little finishing touch to this is just take like a black marker. I have a really fine marker, and just kind of add little stitches on the buttons, because otherwise they're just kind of floating in space. Like, what's holding them down, you know? So get that on there. Finish it off. That's cute. Okay, again, you put our little a little bow on there to close it up, and then finally we have a little envelope here, and it's one piece. What you want to do is fold everything at the score marks. Okay, and then we have this brown piece. It's going to go on the inside on the flap, and I want my texture side out. So what I'm going to do, since I'm not really, I don't want to put glue on this because I may not get it lined up perfectly and end up getting glue on parts that are showing through. So I'm going to do this first. Do a little drop there, and then just work around the perimeter here. And then you can also do a little bit on the perimeter here, just so that we're sure we're getting it all the way out there so it doesn't come peeling off. Okay, and just get that nice and centered on the flap portion. I'm going to use my brayer. There we go. All right, and somehow I got some glue on there. It's okay. And we have a little button that we're going to put right in the center there. So let's throw some glue on there. And get that nice and centered. There we go. All right, now to close this up, what we're going to do is take this flap on the bottom. Actually, we're going to do it that way. So put the flaps in, bring the bottom up, and then we're just going to go real slight with the glue here. You don't need a lot. I tend to put too much on the flaps and then kind of warps them, and I'm like, oh man, all that work, and then I mess up the envelope. That's okay. All right. Just hold that in place until it sets, and it looks like I didn't get enough glue in there. And that's what happens sometimes. Get our glue on there. And there's our envelope, coordinating envelope. Let's get this thing back on here so I can show you how it all fits in there nicely. You may have to kind of squish the little bow tie down a little bit to get this whole thing to fit in there. Yep. And there we go. Now I would probably not mail this in this envelope, obviously. I'd probably put it in another padded envelope of some sort, but there you go. There's your beautiful card. Okay. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that you guys make this for Dad this Father's Day, or if you have someone that's you know, really into steampunk or anything that sort of fits this motif. I think it's a very unique card, and I'm sure that whoever gets it's going to love it. So if you did enjoy this video, please take a moment to visit us on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And as always, I look forward to crafting with you again.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.